Hey everyone, in the previous video, I showed you how to download some survey data from Qualtrics into a spreadsheet. So now I'm going to use Google Sheets or these to analyze this data just initially. So here we have a number of questions on a similar Likert scale. I have information on the respondent, whether or not they were from an LEA or whether or not they were from an EPP or an Ed Prep program. And so I've kind of outlined here for myself a little analysis plan. I'd like to know how many were from each of these groups, an LEA or an EPP. I'd also like to know how many respondents answered each of these questions, because if you'll notice, we have some missing data, some people that didn't respond to every item. So I'd like to know how many. I'd like to know in each of these categories from not important to a very important, how many responded. And then I'd like an average of that. Since it's ordinal, it might be nice to know, is it closer to 5 or closer to 1? And then a standard deviation, which is just a measure of variation. So the higher the number here, the more spread out my respondents were. And I have down here some notes, which is just some of the functions that we'll be using to do this. Okay. So to start out, I'm going to find out the number of LEA and EPP respondents. So to do that, I'm going to use the countif function. So I do my equal sign countif, and I want to know if in this column, and this column will be from, if we go scroll up, we can highlight from C3 all the way down to C48. And then I do a comma, and now it's asking me, what do you want me to count? And I want to count if you're number 1, because that would correspond to the LEA response, okay? Which I would, if I don't remember that, I can look back at my survey and see which one came first, and LEA came first. So I'll close my parentheses, I'll hit enter, and I find that there are 20 of those. Now I want to do the same thing for the EPP. So count if, it's that same C3 to C48. I just typed it in that time. And this time, though, I want to count it if you're a 2, because that would be an EPP. And so I have my numbers now. I know that there were 20 respondents from districts and that there were 26 from the LEA. Okay. Now we're going to do the same type of thing with our Likert responses. But to do this, I'm going to do a little just additional step to make it streamlined a little bit quicker. So for my sample, I do want to count if, and then I'm going to do E, and I'm going to put a $ in here in 3. And remember, we talked about what a $ does. It locks that. In this case, it'll lock that row. And I want to go from E3 to E48. And what I want to look for is just any number that is greater than, or excuse me, less than the number 6. Okay, and if I do that, it's just going to count these cells. Now, I had to do that. You can use the count A, but the problem with count A is sometimes when you're downloading from surveys, even though it looks blank, it's not blank. There's something there. And so it'll count it, even though we know that cell, for example, E32 is blank, it'll still count it. So I'm just doing look for a number that's less than 6 and count it. And I'm going to hit enter there. And so there were 45 of the 46 respondents. And we see that we have some missing data here in E32. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this little blue box in the bottom corner and I'm going to drag it down to very important. And it's just going to repeat that same thing. But what I want now is I want to switch from less, if it's less than 6 to whether or not for not important, it's 1. And then for, a 2 on this important scale, I'll put the number 2 in, and we saw 1 person responded with a 2. And now with a 3, we see that 3 people responded. With a 4, we had 9 people. And obviously a majority of the people put 5. So with this question, it was how important is the P-cell standard for that it should be reflected. And most people felt like this was very important. Now we can also use our average function. Since this is ordinal, it kind of gives us a range of 1 to 5. And so we'll average the same thing. We'll do E $3 colon E $48. We'll lock that in and hit enter. And we get it's 4.6. And then we'll do the same thing, but using now the standard dev, stdev, and it's the same thing to do that $sign. We want to lock that in, and we'll see why in just 1 second. And now I have my measure of spread. Okay. So now that we've done that for column E, we have the same items that go across lots, right? So instead of having to type this for every item and analyze it, what we're going to do is we're actually just going to highlight this full column of responses, and I'm just going to drag it. Now I'm just going to drag it across one of these columns to start with. And notice what happened with that $sign was the F change, the E changed to an F because now we're in a new column, but those rows stayed locked. So now it's doing the same analysis, but on column F. And that's what we want. And we want to keep doing it across all of these columns till we get to our next. So I'm just going to now drag across all of these until I get to the end of that Likert rating on very important. And you could see quite quickly, Google Sheets does all those calculations. So now we have the average of each one of these. We have the standard deviation, and then we have the count of how many responded, and then how that response broke down by 1 to 5 on this important scale. Okay, so we'll grab that in a second, but for now I want to do the second analysis, and then we'll put that into tables. All right, both of these. So the last item I have here, and this is more a categorical, which is 1 reflected, 2 it's reflected but include, so 3 reflected but not include, and 4 I'm not sure. These we're not going to average because it doesn't make sense to do this. These are nominal in the way in which they're measured. But I do want to know how many responded because I have a little bit of sample attrition. At this point, people have stopped. Some of my folks have stopped responding. Okay, so we'll do that same process where we're going to do the count if. And in this case, we want to count if it's a CL, and we'll do it again, $3, CL, $48. And I want to count you if you are less than, oh, I always do greater than, less than, and we have 4 here, so we can put the number 5 if you wanted. And close that down. So we had 39 folks. Okay. And then I'll do, again, a count if function. Oh, I guess I could just drag it down. That's what I did, huh? So let's just go ahead and copy this down on all of these. And then we could change the less than 5 to a 1. We can change the less than 5 to a 2. I'm just hitting enter to go down to the next cell. A 3. And finally, a 4. Okay, so I have my counts for this item. I'm going to highlight them all and I'll just drag across, and there's my responses for each one. So we see from the 46 that we originally had, we're now down to 39 or 38 in some cases, but they're giving us a sense of whether they should include it. All right, so that's a simple analysis. Now what I can do, because it's a little harder to read here on this spreadsheet, is I could grab, for example, we'll start with this. These very important, that's important to very important, or not important to very important scale. I'm just highlighting it. So I'm going to drag over till I get to my next one. See how many items we had here, huh? Copy it. So I'm going to do Command C on a Mac. I'm going to go over now to my tables column. I'm going to select in here. You can right click and do paste special. And I want to paste transpose. So what that's going to do is it's now going to move everything that's on the horizontal to the vertical and vice versa. So we've just rotated it. Okay. Now what I missed here, I got the sample. So I got all the values. What I missed was actually grabbing the categories. So that was silly. No, I think I have it here. Okay, so what we could do here, and this is, sorry. It did exactly what I wanted to do, which now I can look across each one of these items. What I'm missing here in column A is what each one of these items represents. So what I'm going to do to show you that, I'm going to just bring this down so it's not so big. I'm going to go back to my data, and I'm going to scroll up, and I'm going to do the same thing, but start with Q11. and I'm going to drag over, and I want to copy what each one of these means, because I can't remember, right? I can't remember what Q83 is. So I want the description of it. And so I'm just copying this row 2, which has each of these descriptions. I'm going to copy it again. I'm going to move here, and I'm going to do that same right click, paste special, and I want to paste transposed. Okay, now I have a description, and it's long. So what you can do is you can do this wrap text wrapping. I'd like you to wrap around so I can see it. And now I know what each one of these represents. So now I have a table that obviously I wouldn't put in a publication. This is really long. This wouldn't be something I would necessarily present out, but this is for you to be able to look at these values. Now you could sort these by the average from high to low, and that would give you a sense of where they rated the highest to the lowest. You could sort by very important, right? So however you want to do it, but now you can analyze this table. And now I could do the same type of thing with the last graphic here. So if I come over, I've got these P-cell standards. It's commenting, you know, are these reflected in the North Carolina standards? So I can grab that. We'll just make one more table here quickly. So right under here, I'm just going to paste these with paste special, paste transposed. So there's my P-cell. And now I want to know, I'm actually going to click just one above because it's going to give me that. Oops, right there. All right, and now I'll scroll down and I'll grab these same categories here, copy them. I'm selected here, and I'll do again, paste transposed, and that'll give me that. So I did the same thing for this last category, okay? So that gives us a sense of some initial analysis. There are other things we can do. We can make, you know, graphics from these tables if we want to highlight the top items. We can, you know, write up what we're finding in general, notice any patterns or themes. We can, if we want, format these conditionally by color so we can just see quickly, you know, where things pop out and where they don't. But that's the simple process to start analyzing our survey data.